Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MMA Island podcast. I'm Jack Kennedy alongside the great Mace Martinez, and this is your podcast for the latest in MMA. I'm Jack Kennedy, and they hit a lot harder, in my opinion, too.
Mace Martinez.
He put Aldo stiff in 13 seconds before Bruce Buffer could even plant his ass in his seat.
I'm Marcos Diaz.
You can't keep getting opportunities if you get hurt.
And this is the MMA Island podcast.
All right, so we have a great podcast for you today. We finally get to pick fights again. Fights are happening again. And it's a good fight night too. Max Holloway returning. So we will be predicting the co-main and main event like we do usually. We finally have fights now, as well as going over two big pieces of news and predicting the weight classes, middleweight and light heavyweight, who the champion will be at the end of the year. Let's get into it. So predicting fights, Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown. This is the co-main event for the upcoming fight night this Saturday. What are you thinking for this fight?
I like the fight, man. Two legends, obviously, of the sport. For me, Carlos Condit needs this win. Who knows where he stands with the UFC as far as like a potential release goes. But he's 1-5 in his last 6. So a win over a tough guy like Matt Brown, it would be nice. I'm not sure how many fights Condit has left on his UFC contract, but I think his time to being close is done. He's been a great fighter for years. Just doesn't have the same tenacity and ferociousness he once did, at least in my opinion. As far as Brown goes, he's 2-4 in his last 6, so he needs a win just as well. I feel like he's kind of in the same boat as Condit. He's even stated that this being his last fight isn't out of the question, so retirement might be around the corner for him as well. We'll just have to wait and see. He hasn't gone to a decision since 2015. It's been either submission or KO wins and defeats since then. Obviously, he had the knockout over Diego Sanchez with the big elbow and took care of business there. But these guys are absolute legends, Hall of Famers, in my opinion. I feel like Brown has a little bit more left in the tank than Condit does. So I got to give this one to him, and I think by unanimous decision.
All right, that's interesting. Yeah, so I'm going to lean Carlos Condit on this one. And it's just because in his last fight, he looked phenomenal. He looked so good. He looked really fresh. He kind of looked like vintage Carlos Condit, not near as much power, and I don't think he can take a shot like he could before, but he looked very good in this last outing. Matt Brown, very tough. Like you said, in my opinion, these guys should be future Hall of Famers. You can't write the story of the UFC without these guys in it. Two legends. I don't know. Anything could happen. This, for me, is not really about winning and losing as much as it is just a great fight between two great fighters in the co-main event of a fight night in Fight Island. I just think these guys are going out there. They're going to work. It's going to be a really fun fight. For me, Carlos Condit's just going to be a little bit too elusive. Again, in his last fight, he looked phenomenal. Matt Brown, obviously, I think he definitely has the power advantage, especially with that big elbow he likes to throw and everything. So we'll see, but I think Carlos Condit will be too elusive, and I think he'll end up with a decision win.
Nice.
All right, on to the main event, and this is a phenomenal fight. Massive stakes at 145. Max Holloway, who, in our opinion, is the people's champ right now, should be the champion, is fighting up-and-coming Calvin Kattar, who has looked phenomenal as of late. Who are you thinking wins this?
And you said it. It's a great fight. Max is currently the number one contender, number one featherweight in the world. He should be the champion, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's 1-3 in his last 4, though. He had the loss to Poirier, and then he was able to beat Edgar. And then he's got those 2 fights against Volkanovski, which, like, I think we both agree. I think Max won the second one. I think the first one was really close, but I think Max pulled the second one out. But obviously that's why you don't leave it in the hands of the judges.
Yep.
But Max could arguably be the greatest featherweight of all time. And he has plenty of time to prove that to be true again. And it starts with Calvin Kattar. Now, while Max has suffered somewhat of a minor setback, Kattar's on the other end of that. He's won 4 out of 5. 3 of those ones by KO or TKO. But Holloway is going to be his toughest test to date.
Oh, yeah.
Without question. So he's a tough fighter who I think will welcome the challenge of standing with somebody like Max. But at the end of the day, I think Max is just a little bit too much for him right now. I think Max I think the volume that Max, the output that he has will be too much. I think eventually he'll overwhelm Calvin Kattar. And I could see a late stoppage, maybe fourth or fifth round, a little TKO stoppage for Holloway.
Yeah, that's so. I've been wanting to pick Max Holloway for this a long time. He's such a great fighter, and I really like Calvin Kattar's approach to this fight coming up. All of the stuff, he's not overlooking Max Holloway at all. He thinks that really Max Holloway, he hasn't explicitly said it, but he said basically that Max Holloway is the toughest fight in the division, which I agree with. Not only is this Calvin Kattar's toughest fight of his career, I think this is his toughest fight. I think Max Holloway is the toughest fight for really anybody in that division at the moment, and has been for quite some time. So this is a championship level fight right here. And really this is a title eliminator as well, because I'm guessing Ortega versus Volkanovski, and the winner of this is right next. Because I don't know if Volkanovski will get an automatic rematch if he loses. And anyways, that's messy. We'll talk about this right now. It's such a good matchup. Calvin Kattar, he kind of, his style is very interesting because he kind of waits, takes a slow start, has to get hit first, and then he doesn't strike first. He always waits to get hit first, and then he hits back. Yes. And it's been effective a long time. But in his last fight especially, it took a little bit for him to get going because the opponent realized that and didn't really want to do this. So that's an interesting factor. Max Holloway pours on the pressure and the output. He doesn't give guys time to think. So we might see Calvin Kattar fighting the way he's never really fought before and actually having to take some steps forward against Max Holloway, who really brings the pressure on, and we just won't get hit as much. The stuff that Max Holloway does is incredible. For all the reasons you said, though, Max Holloway has been on a bit of a losing streak, even though I know he doesn't see his last loss as a moral loss. And if you look at the guys he's been fighting, Dustin Poirier at 155, right. And that was a crazy fight too. He was sitting in the pocket throwing with Dustin Poirier, which is actually the reason I don't think he'll get knocked out against Calvin Kattar, because Dustin Poirier has some heavy hands, and he was just standing there trading with him at not even his natural weight class. So I don't think Max Holloway would get finished. But Calvin Kattar, like you said, he's on a huge winning streak. I thought he was going – I've been having this feeling that Calvin Kattar was going to win and upset Max Holloway throughout the week. But we're approaching fight day, and just seeing the build-up and seeing the stare down, I cannot bet against Max Holloway. He looks so good. He looks so ready to go, so focused. So I'm taking Max Holloway by a decision. I think he puts the pressure on. I don't think Calvin Kattar will be able to really set his feet until later in the fight. And by that point, Max Holloway's in his rhythm. So I'm taking Holloway by a decision.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. So we've got some great news coming up. Nate Diaz, he is returning to the lightweight division. We talked about that a little bit on the past podcast, the division, the whole state of it. What do you think about this crazy news?
So Dana says they're working on a fight for him. He says it's not Tony Ferguson. So I don't think it would be Charles Oliveira or Justin Gaethje. I mean, I think they're trying to match those guys up. So if it's anybody in the top 10, I think it's maybe Paul Felder or RDA. Obviously, RDA has already beaten Nate, pretty badly, with the leg kicks adding up and all that. But I think Dana mentioned that if Nate was to win the fight that is being planned, that he could be next in line for a title shot. So it's got to be somebody big, or he just wants him to face Conor for the belt if he happens to beat Poirier. So who knows? But I'm glad he's back. I'm glad he's back at 155. The 155 division is hot right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a lot of contenders in there, a lot of killers, a lot of motivated people in that division shooting for the title. I think the trilogy will happen down the line with McGregor now, especially if McGregor's able to capture the belt. And I think we'll get it at 155 if McGregor's a champion. I mean, I think Nate would want to compete for it. And I think that was a stipulation for McGregor the last time they fought, is that it had to be at 155. So I'm just excited for him to be back, most of all. But for him to go back to 155 is even more exciting. It makes things a lot more interesting in that division.
Oh, yeah. So I see maybe Diaz, he has to get a big shot in his first fight. Maybe he does go Conor 1. I don't know. I feel like this might be a backup plan for Dana White if Conor loses to Dustin on Saturday, because he's been talking about Conor winning nonstop. He hasn't even mentioned a scenario where Dustin wins. However, with this fight, And in my opinion, everybody's opinion at 155, Nate Diaz should not even be in consideration for the title shot with everybody else that's up there. But if Conor loses, well, it's not for a title fight. Then you match him up. It's a trilogy. I mean, everybody would watch that. And then if Conor wins and Nate Diaz pulls it out against, I think, I don't know about Paul Felder or RDA. I think those guys might be a little bit too low, especially for like Nate Diaz wanting to get a next title shot. But I'm thinking maybe, depending on the timeline, the loser or winner of Hooker versus Chandler, maybe matching up against Nate Diaz as like just another fight if they want to take that. And then if Nate Diaz wins that, then you could put him in the talks for a championship fight. So that's the scenario I see. And then obviously the ultimate goal of this, and I think everybody realizes this, the ultimate goal is Conor versus Nate Diaz 3. That is the overarching goal at 155. That's where Conor wanted the second fight in Conor's real where he's comfortable fighting. And really, I mean, if it was for a belt, that'd be on top of it. But Nate Diaz has to put together some wins, in my opinion, to get to that level. And I do not think he should just be given the title, a title shot overhead of. You mentioned it's such a stacked division overhead of all of those guys. So I think my overall takeaway is Nate Diaz versus Conor 3 is going to happen at some point. It's going to.
Yeah, well, one thing that I did consider or that I did think about whenever I heard Dana say that if he won the fight, he could be next in line for a title shot was if Oliveira has already expressed that he does not want to fight Gaethje, that he don't think he should. Mm-hmm. So like we said last week, that's not something he needs to do, start turning down fights. Dana wants people who are ready to fight anywhere, anytime, anybody. That's Nate Diaz. So I did kind of think maybe he is going to give him a top guy, a Gaethje or somebody. If Oliveira doesn't want that and Nate's coming back, you know, if it's not Tony Ferguson, who could it be? If Oliveira doesn't want that fight with Gaethje and Nate's coming back and he's like, I'm down to fight, I want in the title picture, then why not? But win over Gaethje, he's definitely in line for a title shot. But yeah, he's not going straight for the title, and I can't see him getting a title shot after beating Felder or RDA. I don't think he beats either one of those guys really. But who knows, man? Who knows what's going on? But I'm sure it's gonna be something big.
Yeah, for me it depends. It's interesting. People mention a motivated Conor, and he's really, really good. A motivated Nate Diaz is another one of the guys you don't want to match up against, no matter what your ranking is or whatever, because that's the beauty of the sport that we love, MMA. Anything could happen, and Nate Diaz is one of those guys that's so good. His boxing is great, and on the ground he's elite. So he is one of those guys. If he's on for it, he could be a dangerous matchup for anybody. So I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. And they just lifted the whole ban and fines on marijuana, so he's good with that too. So
he's ready to go. Yep.
We might see the Diaz brothers back after all this year. Yeah,
Nick Diaz. We'll see what happens with that. There's always rumors about him coming back, though. We'll see.
Oh yeah.
All right. Now the next piece of news: Cyril Gane, who just got a big victory over Junior Dos Santos on a couple past cards, will be facing Jairzinho Rozenstruik in a massive heavyweight fight. Big step up for Gane. What are you thinking on this one?
Both killers, man. Heavyweight killers for sure. Gane is a finisher. He's 7-0, 6 finishes, and he's done them by submission and TKOs, 3-3. So this dude is dangerous. He's well-rounded. His wins been by guillotine, arm triangle, and heel hook. So no part of your body is safe when you're on the ground with this dude. And on the feet, obviously your chin's in danger. So as far as Rozenstruik goes, he's only gone to a decision one time, and that was a split back in 2018 when he was with Ryzen. Other than that, it's just been a bunch of unconscious dudes that he's fought. Obviously, the only blemish that he's got is the loss to Ngannou. He was knocked out quickly, and that was just – I knew that was coming for somebody. Somebody's going to get a knockout there, and Ngannou just happened to land first. And
that's just Ngannou, though. Ngannou will just go forward, yeah.
Right. So I think within the first 30 seconds of the fight, he landed on him and took him out. So I think this fight will be intense while it lasts. But I like Gane, man. I think he's going to get in there and get the job done. He's really good, really well-rounded. And I think TKO. I think it's going to be kind of like Ngannou and Rozenstruik. I think they're just going to start exchanging. And I think Gane's a little bit more technically sound. I think he'll land on Rozenstruik and take him out.
Yeah, I like that. This is such a fun fight. Both these guys are just going to be throwing. My biggest takeaway is how will Rosenstruck respond to losing for really the first time in his career and so on such a big stage against Ngannou. And there's no shame in losing to Ngannou. Ngannou at that point was basically I should get a title shot. Was just walking forward, throwing bombs,
Yes.
and one lands on you. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to sleep. So there's no shame in that. He's still one of the top contenders in the division. Took some time off, came back. I'm very interested to see where he goes. If he's more hesitant or if he wants to just go out there and throw. Gain is a technical dude. He has extreme power. He also has a big height advantage over Jairzinho Rosenstruck. And he also is not afraid to mix in the kicks. And he's not worried about the takedown because he can dominate on the ground, just like you said.
Yes.
It's a tough matchup for anybody. I think Gain is going to be rising up the ranks this year. He's one of my breakout fighters, I think, for 2021, especially this open heavyweight division. So I'm going to pick Gain. I don't know. Probably a knockout. Maybe second. I don't know yet, but I do think Gain just overall is such a good fighter, and I think he'll get it done.
Yeah, I think he's in the top 5 with a win here, and
Oh yeah,
noise up there for sure.
absolutely. All right, on to our last segment today. We've been talking about this on all the past podcasts. We're reaching the end. Only one weight class after this, but some massive weight classes today. Men's middleweight is the first one we're talking about. Israel Adesanya is the champion. Who do you think will be the champ by the end of the year?
Israel has to be the favorite, right? I would think. He's just so good, man. 20-0. He's won some big fights against some tough competition. I still think, and I've said it before, I think him and Gaston need to run their fight back. Even though Kelvin's kind of dropped in the rankings, I think he's in the top 10, but I think he's 8 or 9. So he's dropped a little bit. Obviously, he lost by submission. So, and so my first guy would be Adesanya, and then that brings me to Kelvin. Like I said, I think what he's got to beat the top guys to get back to Adesanya, and I think with a little bit better cardio going in there against Adesanya, I think he could get the job done against Izzy. That fight was incredible the first go around, so it'd be a shame if we don't get to see it again. And then kind of my dark horse pick, maybe a surprise pick a little bit. I like Marvin Vettori, really tough Italian kid.
Yeah,
he just beat Jack Hermanson in a great fight, and currently number 5, and he's already fought Adesanya back. I think it was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, 2021. So yeah. Back in 18, split decision, lost to Adesanya, which I mean, obviously it was a close fight. One of these 3 guys will be the champ. Izzy is still the favorite in my mind, unless he relinquishes the belt and goes to 205. Because I know he's got a title opportunity there against Jan Blachowicz. So, and if he plans on defending both belts, I think he could do that. I think he's capable, just like Amanda Nunes has done it. I think that he would be capable of doing it. So he's the favorite in my eyes, unless he vacates the belt. And then you got those other 2 that'll go for it. But I don't think he's done at middleweight. I think there's still some good fights for him to have. So I could see him at the end of the year with it still.
Yeah, I like that. And Izzy would be my pick, but I think he's going to go up to 205. He's already challenging for the belt. And this is a little bit giving away my 205 pick. I'll go into it more in depth. I don't think he will be able to keep on to both of the belts. Amanda Nunes is able to do it, but really 135 and 145 is the same division over there.
Yep.
Dana White doesn't really let guys keep 2 belts, especially in clogged up divisions like these. 185, we've seen Vettori. You got Whitaker. Cannonier still in the mix. I'm forgetting a ton of people. Hermanson, Darren Till, Gaslam could climb back up. There's a million people in that division. Light heavyweight is really gaining more people. And if Blachowicz loses, he's going to need an immediate rematch or want an immediate rematch, or maybe Jones comes in. There's way too many fights to be made, in my opinion, to hold on to both belts. It would clog up the division. So I don't think he'll be able to hold on to 2. So I'm going to go ahead and say my 185 pick is Robert Whitaker. By the end of the year, he has looked phenomenal as of late. He looks almost even better than his old self. So technical. One of the highest fight IQs in the UFC right now. After really suffering adversity, lost to Adesanya terribly. A lot of stuff is going in behind that fight. I don't think he loses that bad if they fight again. Fought against Darren Till after some time off, got dropped early. fought back in what was a crazy technical fight, got the win, and obviously just against Cannonier looked phenomenal. Shut down a guy who's never really been shut down before. So he looked so good to me. I think he's a very tough matchup. He's used to being the champ. And I think that if Izzy goes up and wins, they'll give Robert Whitaker versus maybe Vettori if he beats. I think Vettori and Paulo Costa might match up, and then maybe a Vettori Robert Whitaker matchup, and that would be a crazy fight to see. But I think Robert Whitaker's fight IQ and the way he moves and everything, I think he outclasses Vettori a little bit more, and I think he will be the champion by the end of the year. So, yeah, Robert Whitaker for me.
Surprise! That's surprising me.
All right, 205. Israel Adesanya, Jan Blachowicz is scheduled. Jan Blachowicz is the champ as of right now. Who will be your champ by the end of the year?
Like you said, Jan's a champ now. Strong, powerful dude. I think he's going to be hard to beat. With that being said, I think Santos and Reyes can get it done, in my opinion. Both of those dudes fought John Jones to the brink, the bitter end. No quit in either one of those guys. Santos with 2 blown knees took Jones to the distance and just really fought his ass off in there. So he's got a lot of heart and a lot of skill to go with it. So I definitely think he's one of the guys that could get it done, given the opportunity. And Reyes, in many people's minds, beat John Jones.
Oh yeah,
or should have gotten the decision. I don't agree with that. I feel like if you're going to beat the champ, if you want to take the belt, then it's got to be decisive. You either need a finish or a unquestionable decision in your favor. So it's one of those 3 for me. It's Jan, Reyes, or Santos, unless Izzy goes up to 205. Then I think it's Adesanya. So four guys possibly, but Izzy is going up. I think he's going to take the belt. So one of those other guys that I mentioned are going to have to beat Adesanya.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I think Israel Adesanya will be the champ by the end of the year because I think he moves up. I think he stays there. A lot of potential matchups to be made down the line with John Jones. There's a lot of guys at 205, and also I think he's built for 205 as well. But one guy that you didn't mention who just beat Thiago Santos is a very interesting matchup for him, I think. Let's go over to Teixeira. Teixeira poses a very interesting matchup. He's one of the toughest guys. He's really good at wrestling and everything and closing the distance. Now, can he take a shot against Israel Adesanya? I don't think so. However, it does pose a very interesting matchup, just like Kelvin Gastelum did. When you mix in the wrestling, it does put some pressure on Israel Adesanya. How will his cardio stand up at 205? That's the matchup I'm looking forward to seeing. Reyes again, if he beats Jan Blachowicz, maybe a Jan rematch. And just that fight in general, it's such an interesting fight. But I just think just kind of like the Paulo Costa fight. Now, the height's about the same, unlike the last fight, but it's kind of a similar matchup. You've got a super power puncher versus Israel Adesanya, who's one of the most technical guys and puts on power just by whipping a shot around. So I favor Izzy in that matchup. So just overall, Israel Adesanya is my champ by the end of the year, light heavyweight.
Yeah. And I'm thinking Dana's hoping that Izzy can get the job done against Jan, and he's hoping that Jones will drop back down to 205.
Yeah.
I know he said that fight needs to take place at 205. It don't need to take place at heavyweight, but Jones has made it clear, at least for now, that he don't have any intention of doing that. So I think he'll change his mind. If Izzy's able to get it done and he starts poking at him again on social media and stuff, I think he can get Jones to come back down again. And oh, man, then that'd be crazy. But, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of money to be made, too, for that fight.
Yeah, definitely. Bad blood, everything, pay-per-views.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be blockbuster.
Yep, absolutely. All right, I think that'll do it for this podcast. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. You can listen everywhere. We're on anywhere you can listen to a podcast, iTunes, Spotify. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at MMA Island and on our website, MMAisland.net. We have a huge week for you next week. McGregor card. Thank you so much, Mace. Great podcast, man.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.